That's right, SupercenterChef. Thank you for tuning in with us today. Me and the family are here to bring you another holiday video. This one centering on chocolate chip cookies with walnuts. I bring you this recipe because that's what you, the watchers of these videos, have voted for and say you wanted to see next. These are some delicious cookies. This batch just came out of the oven. Just a few minutes ago, and they're just wonderful. They're big old cookies. They have an interesting history. They're actually stolen from this, or the recipe is actually stolen from this company in New York, started by these ladies who needed high energy cookies for their triathlons. There's a website that I watch, and they have been for the last, I don't know, it seems like a couple years, have been trying to replicate this recipe, and what I've presented today is the best that we've come up with on how they make these cookies. I've never had one of their cookies, so I don't know how close this is to it, but they're pretty darn good. So let's learn how to do them. To do that, we'll have to go back in time a little to before these cookies were made. Let me turn on the time machine, and a couple hours ago, I will tell you how we make these cookies. Time machines always get me very confused. I'll see you soon. That always makes me a little woozy, that time travel business, but it's okay. I feel younger already. Where were we? Oh yes, making my famous chocolate chip cookies with walnuts. Let's see, what do we have here? We've got our ingredients. Let's talk about those first. One of the cool things about making cookies, I think, is that getting all the ingredients together is probably the hardest part. After that, everything's downhill. As you can see, I've got them all here now. We start off with 2 sticks of unsalted butter, cold. Now let's talk about that for a second. The cold butter will help the cookies be fluffier. Some cooks leave the butter out overnight so they can come to room temperature. That's not what we want here, but neither is completely cold butter taken right out of the refrigerator. You would have to have a very strong mixer to actually cream that. So what I do is leave this out for about 30 minutes or an hour prior to making the cookies. So 2 sticks unsalted butter. In the cookie mixer, I've measured out 1 cup of brown sugar and ½ a cup of granulated sugar. Let's talk about that for a second. The recipe calls for 1.5 cups of sugar. You can experiment and have fun with that a little bit. I personally like brown sugar a lot, so I really packed that 1 cup in there well. It's probably more like 18 or 23 cups of unpacked brown sugar. Not really, but you get the point. I like my brown sugar. It's in there. 1 cup packed. Then I use 1/2 of the granulated sugar for a total of 1.5 cups. We've got 2 eggs in here with 1 tablespoon of vanilla. The vanilla is not an absolute requirement for this recipe. I just happen to like vanilla a lot. You can also use 2 teaspoons. Like I said, I like it a lot. I use a tablespoon. What else? I guess I should show you. See, I really do have it in there. 2 eggs, 1 tablespoon of vanilla. Here I have 3 1/4 to 3 1/2 cups of AP flour, which has been sifted. If you're anal like me, you may measure out the flour by weight, which is what I recommend. This recipe calls for flour to be measured with the spoon and level method, which will give us a little less total flour by weight than the previous recipe we did, the bread recipe. And so for this, I use about 4 ounces by weight per cup of flour, which gives us 13 to 14 ounces total. If you are anal out there in TV land, as I am, 13 or 14 ounces just isn't quite specific enough. So I use 13 1/2 ounces right here in this bowl. 3/4 tablespoon kosher salt. I promised you I'd get little fancier containers than the big cups I had last time. That's it. 3/4 teaspoon, I'm sorry if I said tablespoon earlier. 3/4 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon of baking powder and 1/2 teaspoon baking soda. Let's talk about that for a second. Baking powder will make for lighter, fluffier cookies, which is what we want here. So there's a little leeway in the baking powder to baking soda equation. I go a little heavier on the powder and a little lighter on the soda so that we can get the fluffiest cookies possible. Why use baking soda at all? Well, I'll tell you. Baking soda is a base and is used to even out acidity in ingredients. We do have some acid in this recipe, and that's why you have to have a little baking soda. What, you may ask, is the acid in our ingredient? It is the brown sugar. As you probably know, brown sugar is really just regular sugar with some molasses added in there. And therein lies the acid requiring the baking soda. Full details of the possible substitutions here can be found on the blog. See right there, SupercenterChef.blogspot.com. Tune in, great reading, great fun for you and the whole family. We have 12 ounces or 2 cups of good quality semi-sweet sugar. There is a little leeway in here too. I use this fancy schmancy brand, Ghirardelli. I just priced it today. It was $3.38 for this 12 ounce pack. You can get it significantly cheaper, also priced today at $2.38 of the Nestle. And if you can't taste the difference in your recipe, sure, go for the cheaper stuff. I think I can tell a little difference with the expensive stuff, and so that's why I use this. Also, you don't have to use all semi-sweet. Some people combine half semi-sweet and half milk chocolate, 6 ounces of each for a total of 12 ounces. That's fine too. I just think the semi-sweet throughout tastes a little better. And I have 1 cup of shelled walnuts. I don't use the chopped up kind. When we mix it all together, the paddle action will chop it up on its own. So I just get the shelled walnuts. That seems to work fine. I have no idea how much this costs. Probably about $2.50. I know. They're expensive cookies, but man, they're good. So let's get on with it. There's 3 basic steps to a cookie recipe. The first step is creaming the fats and sugar. Second step is mixing in the wet ingredients. That's the egg and the vanilla. Third step is mixing in the dry ingredients. For the dry ingredients, I'm going to go ahead and throw in the baking powder, baking soda, and the salt, just so we'll be all ready to go when the time comes. We have our 2 sticks of butter here that we're going to put in my mixer. The less you have to mix, the fluffier the cookies will be. So I try to aim for the low side of the creaming spectrum and use the coldest butter I can. Now, the colder the butter, the harder it will be to mix and the more powerful KitchenAid you will need. Just warning you. So let's start creaming. We've got the KitchenAid mixer here. We lift up the bowl and start the action. Can you see it there? That's what I'm talking about with it being kind of creamed. Light, fluffy, and a little bigger than the original volume. We'll scrape down the sides a bit in between all of these steps and more often if indicated. Now it is time to add in our wet ingredients, which you may remember are the 2 eggs and a tablespoon of vanilla. I'll do this nice and slow. do this one egg at a time. We're going to want to add the flour in several steps so that the dough forming in here can more adequately hydrate the flour. That'll lead to a more consistent batter and taste better, more fluffy, all that good stuff we want. Another trick I use in pouring the flour into these mixers, they're notorious for, I don't understand this design. How are you going to get flour in there without spilling it everywhere and dumping the bowl and all? It's a mess. What I use is one of these cheap cutting boards that you can get at the Supercenter. It folds so that you can easily kind of dump the flour in there. Let me scoot this a little closer to me so I don't make too much of a mess, and we'll get started. Start on fairly low setting. I haven't ever actually tried this. Usually I just do it the messy way, but the guys on TV all use these things, so I feel obligated on my TV show to do the same thing. We'll see if we can make it work. There's the first batch, then we'll speed it up a little bit until it incorporates well. Again, we'll need to scrape down the sides in between each adding of flour so that everything gets incorporated well. I know I keep saying that word incorporated, but that's really the secret to any baking recipe, is to get things incorporated or mixed well, or whatever word you want to use. I like incorporated, it makes me feel sophisticated. Then we'll add the rest, or another third or so. Really just repeating the procedure. We put the flour in there, we increase the speed, we scrape down the sides, and then we'll do the